We pray to the electronic media to be able to handle today's lesson. So it's wonderful that you're all here today. Today we're going to talk about that which cannot be spoken about. This is going to be an experiment. I don't give you any guarantee about what will happen today because I don't know myself. Today we're talking about the pathway of love, which is extraordinarily powerful and is quite capable of sweeping all capacity to function aside. We have great hopes that that will not happen early in the lecture. The Amna Shivaya tape that we were listening to calibrates at 740. And it's difficult to function and also be in that energy field. It's not wise to drive a car, anyway. So you're aware that everything is happening of its own as an expression of divinity, which is the allness, the totality of all that exists. The realization that one's own existence is due to the constant presence of divinity. Contrary to the unenlightened view that divinity created threw the dice somewhere back in history and then disappeared and is waiting for you somewhere until that awesome day called Judgment Day is a terrifying misconception of reality. It's because of the presence of God right now, one's existence from instant to instant is dependent completely on the presence of God. So one could say that that which one considers to be oneself, the ego, is the content, and God is the ultimate context. So self with a small s is the contents, self with a large S is the context. Enlightenment is merely identifying progressively with the infinite self and realizing that one is all that is forever. In the first lecture we said that, in every lecture we affirm that one of the most important pieces of information to realize is that there is no such thing as cause in the world, that is an abstraction, that the whole basis of the ego is based on the premise of cause. Cause is based on duality. Cause is the belief that there is a this causing a that, separate in time and place. If there has to be a this causing everything, then there has to be a this causing whatever you think you are. And that's how the ego maintains some semblance of belief. There must be an actor behind your actions. There must be a speaker behind your speaking. There's got to be a doer behind your doings. And therefore, the illusion that there is a this causing a that is the main block. It is also the whole basis of science. And I was looking at a book somebody sent me, putting together advanced quantum mechanics and brain function. And you see how linearity strains and strains and strains to reach that which is really non-linear. The book calibrates at 465. trying to push the concept of cause to its ultimate and make it fit a realm in which there is no cause is quite a difficult task. So anyway. Today we're going to, today is like a bird trying to describe to you what a bird is like. The only thing that can describe what a bird is like is a not bird. If you're not a bird, you can describe what a bird is like. But if you are a bird, what can you say about it? I go from tree to tree and I eat worms. End of story, you know. You just are that which you are. And the realization of that can sometimes take you out of the world quite a bit. We weren't even sure how we were going to get here this morning, but we got here with the help of friends and a police escort through traffic, yes. So, today we're talking about love. The first 8 lectures were really preparatory. Because we can talk about the ego, we can describe it, first of all, transcending duality to non-duality. It involves quite a deal of learning in a way. And of course, we can let go of that learning when the state itself prevails. But we've tried to cover the main blocks to love as the ultimate realization by taking apart the ego, seeing how it's constructed, basically dualistically due to positionalities. These positionalities are due to common belief systems, which really arise originally from the animal kingdom. So it's not necessary to feel guilty about so-called having an ego in quotes, because we inherited from worms and birds and other things, which are inherent in the brain. And see, as the animal evolves, as consciousness evolves, it first appears on the planet as animal. The animal is only interested in survival. And to survival, it has to find its way around in a physical domain, and it operates out of a this and a that. If there's a worm there and you're a bird here, you got to gauge the distance between here and the worm, and whop. You have to know direction, distance, timing, and the same mechanisms are still inherent in our brain. So the origin of thinking dualistically is really within the animal domain. The origin of the feeling states of the fields of consciousness, we need that one up here somewhere, are also in the animal domain. They all have to do with survival. So we should put this up and make it go onto the screen there. It goes on there somehow. Wow. Thank you, Lord. I said my function today is totally up to God because I have no capacity to function whatsoever today. I woke up in a state of total non-functioning, and therefore whatever happens is I've got nothing to do with. So I will not take any blame for anything that happens here. The most difficult lecture, and I don't know if we'll be able to do it or not, but we'll attempt it. So today will be an experiment to see if one can be that which you are and also talk about it. The capacity to function in the world for many years was occasioned by first, well, I withdrew, and avoiding the world is how I handle the world. Yeah, by not going there and returning to a small town. Then the capacity to function and gradually returned by some kind of intention that came from elsewhere. And the capacity to function in the world, even till now, is occasioned by humor. It was discovered that humor would allow you to relate to the world and still be in that inner state. And therefore, my usual style socially has to do with humor, because the world is an endless comedy, and in which everything gets converted to its opposite, totally confused and misrepresented, and much hullabaloo is made about that, see? In which cause and effect, perpetrator and victim are totally reversed, which I'm describing in the book I. The impact of the Luciferic. Everybody's concerned about the impact of the satanic, war, rape, killing, murder, blood, and grime, and stuff like that. More subtle and more powerful really is Luciferic, which distorts and reverses things in such a way as to confuse reality so you can't see reality anymore. It's the Luciferic that opens the door to the satanic. That's how war comes about. First you have to confuse the people as to who's the perpetrator and who's the victim, and that opens the door, and then through the door comes the satanic with its guns and its murder and its killing. But first you have to prepare the few with the Luciferic. One of the purposes of Luciferic is it's very profitable. That's why deep pockets are traditionally demonized in our society. If you eat too many hamburgers, it's their fault. They sold them to you. No, I'm overweight. I mean, you see the perpetrator and the victim, yeah? The perpetrator is really the guy who eats too much, and the victim is really, but now we're going to turn it around, see? So you see that happening all the time with war. You see that war is always preceded by the Luciferic distortion that, oh, those guys aren't that bad. We don't have to make any preparation for it. They aren't that bad. Yeah, right. They aren't that bad. That caused 70 million people in the World War II. 70 million people. They aren't that bad. No, sir. Well, they were. So the denial, and the reversal of. So therefore, the world is an endless comedy. And if you can stay in the comedy of it, you can still be in a very good place within yourself and still function within the world. The pathway of the heart, of course, is one of the great traditions. What we've been talking about up to now is primarily the pathways through non-duality. The pathways through non-duality. We've been talking in terms that are familiar to students of Zen and Buddhism and traditionally non-duality. The pathway of devotion through the heart takes the form of karma yoga, devoting all one's actions to God, and devotion, in which Christianity probably is the most prominent in the world today. Prominent teacher traditionally of the way of the heart. And Mother Teresa would be, let us say, an example of the unconditional love. There's many programs available to everyone, of which the 12-step programs, the Course in Miracles, and these are all pathways of love. These are all the pathways of love. The willingness to forgive and forget, let bygones be bygones. And then the Course in Miracles takes you even beyond that. So the 12-step programs take you to unconditional love, which is the ultimate aim of Christianity, taught by Jesus Christ. To love your enemy as yourself, to forgive them. Unconditional love towards all that exists. Calibrates at 540. Traditionally, if you get to love, you don't have to worry, because as you leave the body, you will go to that which you are, which is lovingness and a heavenly state. How to arrive at those stages. So the first lectures we gave were trying to take apart the obstructions to love, so that once you remove their underpinnings, when they come up as an obstacle, they're much easier to let go of, because you realize that what you're talking about in these obstacles to love are always perceptions, how you perceive something. So if we see how the ego puts together perception, we can disassemble it when that block comes up. And you realize, for instance, all the pathways of love talk about forgiveness, but forgiveness truly is not possible if you continue to see somebody as bad, evil, wicked, at fault. It's only when you can remove your own projections and your own perceptions and not label them as anything that you realize that basically they are innocent, that they don't know any better. So that way you can stop hating them, you can forgive them for not knowing them. So forgiveness is not really possible until really, at a certain degree, you transcend dualistic perception, which labels everything as good and bad, deserving and undeserving, etc. So the doorway to unconditional lovingness is sort of the dawning on you that everything is innocent. Everything is innocent. Some are conscious, some are not conscious. That's the difference. Unconscious innocence will kill you in the name of Allah. And unconscious innocence will kill Islamics for Jesus. And I told you about the lifetime where I killed we were both crusaders, and he was there for Allah and I was there for Jesus. And as we killed each other deader than a mackerel, we went out of body and both burst into hysteria. It was so funny, it was hysterical. I'll never forget it. I said, Jesus, I did it for Jesus. He said, I did it for Allah. Well, it was an important point. We both knew it too, that we transcended a really max point of the evolution of consciousness. So periodically throughout time, we've been buddies. When he needs somebody to kill me or I need somebody to kill, he volunteers and we do each other in and transcend that level. So that's love of the highest kind. If it helps you reach enlightenment, of course, you can't do it that way. You've got to give them a fierce fight or it's not real. So within this world, you see, all those things to us are very, very real. And if they're not very, very real, because if you realize it's a game board, it's not very real to you anymore. And you can't get the lesson out of it that you were seeking. You've got to actually be terrified of death in order to walk through death. Once you realize it's a game, you can't do that anymore. All right. So we're going to talk about love to the degree that we're able to talk about love today. And if love takes over, we may or may not continue talking about love. As those states, it's best to have close friends around you. If you're really going into spiritual work seriously, it's advisable to have family, friends, be in an ashram, or at least have spiritual friends who are able to be of assistance should you become incapacitated, which is quite possible. Yeah. And sometimes you don't know how you're going to get here, but your friends put you in a car and they put coffee in your hand and they drive you here. So that's how you get here. And then Nico meets you at the door. It's better to have somebody at least over 200 pounds who waves through the crowd. So assistance appears magically, All right, so we're going to talk about the various understandings of love and the various reflections of love, because most people are more loving in more ways than they realize. They're unconscious of it. The other day, somebody, I was polishing, there was this chrome around the top of the stove, and it was clean, but not really shiny. So I took a steel wool and I started scrubbing it like that, and then it shone like that, and I said, now, you see, it shines with love. So love takes many forms, doesn't it? Duty, commitment, caringness about everything. Yeah, I know. Love for your body, you've got to love this thing. And if you don't, your wife complains bitterly that you don't look nice. So if you fail it, somebody will remind you to feed it and all the things that are necessary to go with it. So love takes many, many expressions. It takes the form of caringness. See, we look at love as some maybe advanced state and, we're not there yet. No, that's not so. Love is constant in our life. See, because nobody is completely at one level or another, see? Let's say, well, this guy's at 125, so he can't know what this is like. No, certain aspects of him do, and those aspects show up in certain aspects of life. So we begin to nurture those aspects and appreciate those aspects of life in which love is taking a form not usually labeled as love. You see, in our world, love, denotes romance, denotes here and there, denotes a me loving you and a you loving me. And that kind of love can be lost. It can be won or gained or lost or taken away from you. And so that's a different kind of love than spiritual love, which is the awareness of a reality that is within you at all times. So in reality, love is a way of being in the world. Love is actually a style, a way of being. It's a way of holding yourself and life and every aspect of life within an overall context. And that overall context gives it a different meaning, significance, a different appearance. It is just as important to polish the chromium as it is to save the life of somebody dying by the side of the street. You understand? It's just that capacity takes this form. Here, it turns over the beetle that's on its back. Here, it saves somebody who's bleeding by the side of the street and calls 911. And here, it helps you in the door so you can get through. You see what I'm saying? So it's that capacity, that willingness to be that to the world. One has no idea of how that is going to be expressed. It may be explaining something to somebody. It may be telling them how to get to 33rd and Fordham. Then you say, how do you get to 33rd and Fordham from here? You say. See, you go here and you go there, and then you can't get to 33rd and Fordham from here. You can't get to there from here, no. So we see that love takes 1,000 different forms, often unrecognized as what it is. As one gets more spiritually committed and advanced, you begin to recognize its expression, and you begin to see love everywhere. And as you get into certain states, the beauty and perfection of all things and the constant presence of love becomes somewhat staggering. At that point, it may be somewhat difficult to function in the world because everything reflects this beauty, and consequently, one has a tendency to break into tears. So, as you get into, let's say, the high 500s, there's a phase in which you cry all the time. People think you're sad, and it's quite the opposite. It's because everything is so exquisitely beautiful that the beauty of love. So beauty and love are one and the same thing. That which is loving is beautiful, and that which is beautiful is an expression of love, because divinity, as it expresses itself in perfection, in the lower levels one doesn't see perfection. What does one see in the lower levels? One sees all of this down here, because these are all your own projections. You constantly see that there's nothing worth anything in the world. You see that everything is sad. Here you see everything is frightening. Here you want everything. Here you're mad about everything. Here you're arrogant about everything. And then, so you don't give to get the lecture, and you give the lecture until you get the courage. I said, this morning we're going. No, she said, this morning we're going. And here, if you get here or you don't, it's all the same. Life doesn't depend on one thing or another. So neutrality you really reach by detaching from things. Yesterday, Kitty, of course, every lecture I give you the recent thing on Kitty. So Orange Kitty, to be dramatic, gets jealous of this affair, and the day before, yesterday afternoon, disappeared. The whole staff, everybody, instead of preparing for the lecture, is scattered all over the landscape looking for the kitty. And there was a big hole in the screen. That's how Kitty got out. So anyway, Kitty was found and the day was saved. But as everybody was out there calling Kitty, Kitty doesn't come to his name, but it keeps people looking for the kitty, feeling good. Actually, the kitty was discovered by one of the people we work with closely, and I forgot what I was talking about. So it was necessary to re-release on Kitty. In other words, to let Kitty go and let go any attachment to Kitty. And so if Kitty was found, it was wonderful. And if Kitty was not found, it was okay. And so you see those losses, what we look at as losses are all opportunities to let go of attachments. So yesterday I had a chance to let go of any attachment that has developed over the years with Kitty. So if Kitty was lost, it was okay. And if Kitty was found, it was very good. So we see to move up, we move into willingness. Okay, the whole spiritual direction is based on willingness. The willingness to let go of attachments, such as I did with Kitty yesterday, just to make sure I wasn't attached to Kitty. And the willingness to make the sacrifices that are necessary. The willingness to apply that which you learn. So all of spiritual direction then depends on a certain willingness. And probably the most important willingness is the willingness to surrender things to God. So people say, willingness about what? The willingness to surrender things, because the obstacles to love are all attachments to that which is unloving, and the willingness to surrender them and let go of the attachment. So the pathway of devotion then is a willingness to constantly surrender anything and everything. It becomes extreme. The willingness to sacrifice all one's positions, titles, money. Let go of all that this world has to offer. Limousines and estates and titles and membership in great societies, etc. And walk away from all of it. So that is a classic stage in spiritual development. What do we call it, where you let go of everything in the world and walk away from it? Renunciation, yeah. So we then come to willingness will eventually take you to renunciation. Renunciation takes the form, classically, in some pathways, as literally renouncing the world, literally walking away from the world, moving out to the middle of nowhere and living on a cot with a box, a candle, and trucking manure. At $40 a truckload, that's hysterical. And anyway, it can take the form of the willingness to renounce everything. And most people who've been at spiritual work for some time have usually let everything go several times. You walk away from it all, start from zilch, And as time goes on, it begins to accumulate around you again, and so then you go through another big letting go. Sometimes, like right now, because I'm writing, and I'd like certain references that I vaguely remember from somewhere in time, but usually book readers who live in the 400s want references in the back with page numbers and stuff. You can't just tell them the aphorisms of Patanjali or something like that. They want to know published by who, what page. Anyway, they're missing the whole point of it. But if you get the point of it, you don't look at any references. But anyway. So renunciation then can take the form of walking away from everything. I threw up my whole spiritual library, walked away from it all. Walked away from my medical library, walked away from all those things. And now when I need a reference, I have to have someone look it up on the internet. I mean, I remember what it's about, and it's just a point I want to make in a reference, but now they expect it in the reference. So, having let go of all one's spiritual library, all one's pictures of Jesus and all that stuff, you walk away from all that. It's trappings. You say, that's all trappings. Incense and sandals and pictures of Jesus and Buddhas and all that stuff. Throw them all out. You throw out Buddhas and Jesus and everybody. They're just pictures, they're just depictions. They're not the real thing, you know what I'm saying? So you walk away from it, and you feel clean and pure and wonderful. But then you got to have something to drive around in, so then you get a car, and then you got to you have to have a garage for the car. Unless you want to go shopping every day, you got to have a refrigerator. So all this stuff begins to accumulate again. And you say, I don't know how I'm going to do it in this world, because you forgot you got this thing here. And it's entertaining, but it has certain needs. Like the kitty, you got to give it food in the morning. I feed the kitty, and I feed this here. I have my coffee, kitty has the food, so we're both happy. If you don't do that, it falls over. You get weak. Sometimes I say to Susie, I said, God, I'm so weak, I can't even walk from here to there. She said, well, if you eat something, that would help. I still find it hard to believe that you have to eat something. I really don't. And days like today, I just live on liquids and food. It's horrible. So, what were we talking about? We were talking about renunciation. Okay, so renunciation then means letting go of worldliness, craving, wanting. So you're trying to transcend the solar plexus. Wanting things is coming out of the solar plexus. I want this, I want that. Walmart's is the cathedral of wantingness. I love Walmart's. You walk down, I always talk about Walmart's because it's our new cathedral. There's a certain divinity there. It's God expressed as everything you could want. God says, you want all these things, here they are. Walmart's is a present from God to the solar plexus of humanity. And not just the solar plexus, but you got to keep this thing going. It means you got to wash it, you got to get soap, you got to get things to put the soap in. You have to have refrigerators, all that stuff. So Walmart's is very helpful to survival. And I always speak well, Sam. All right, so renunciation then takes the form of letting go of what the world chases after. Success, money, power. These are very important. See, the things that you do at what you consider beginning levels of spirituality, oh no, they're not beginning. That's the test at the end. The last lecture we're going to give you what the test is like at the end. The test at the end had been learned early in the game. I'd let go any desire for power. Somebody said, you want power? I'd say, what for? It's a drag. You try being president of the United States with the Pope, man. I said, if you live 24 hours, it's because of the security around you. There's nothing worse than having power. So when that temptation comes at the end, you've refused it years before. You laugh at the Luciferic temptation. All power is yours, claim it. What are you, a joker? Lucifer's best shot. So those things that will come to you later under a different form, and very profoundly powerful as they come, when you get very, very advanced, these things are going to come back to you. So these lessons we learn here are powerfully important. If you can let go of the kitty, you can let go of anything. After I let go of Kitty, Kitty, of course, reappeared. Found by friends and people we work with and love. So renunciation is really an inner. See, when you renounce the world, that's put it where your mouth is. Put your dukes up and let's see if you're just saying that or if you really mean it. Can you really walk away from it all? And when I first came to Sedona, most waiters and people around here were people who had done that. This was a mecca for the spiritually inspired. And the population was 3,000 or 4,000. And most of the waiters and stuff in the restaurants had once been president of so-and-so corporation. And Sedona was full of people who were once wealthy, powerful, and had all kinds of titles and said, hell with it. Now they walked around in sandals and long hair and went home all day. And their family thought they'd gone nuts. And you better see a doctor. So the spiritual madness can take you over and you walk away from everything, and I've done it a couple of times, walked away from it all. Then it comes to you and it's more pristine understanding that renunciation is an internal affair. Renunciation means the willingness to surrender within yourself your cherished positionalities, and more importantly, to surrender the juice you get out of these positionalities. See, the reason you can't transcend the ego is because you get such wonderful juice out of it. Being mad, being angry, being furious, being right, being just. You watch the Middle East, the glee with which they kill each other. I mean, they love it, you know what I mean? Like an idiot, you're going to go over there with a peace thing. The first thing they're going to do is kill you. Because any idiot who goes over with this peace is going to ruin the whole game. There isn't a single person there that's interested in peace, except the peacemongers who get all their publicity and power from selling everybody peace. Yeah, right. Kill them peacers, man. They're ruining our business. I mean, the whole racket is based on anything but peace, and you want to come in and blow their whole racket. It's like asking Dillinger to give up crime. I mean, what would he do without robbing banks, you know what I'm saying? Robbing banks was Dillinger's whole thing, right? And after these miraculous escapes, what was he doing? Within 48 hours, he was robbing a bank. I'll say to these bank robbers, well, what'd you do with the last money you had? 3 days ago, they got $48,000. 2 days ago, they got $14,000. I mean, have you spent it all or what? Are you broke? No. Robbing banks is what he does. That's who he is. That's his thing, you know? So you're going to hold up a parade that says, stop robbing banks? Yeah, right. The way we transcend the limitations of the ego and its positionalities is it gets such a tremendous payoff. And this is where willingness really comes in. The willingness to be honest with yourself, that the reason you cling to this is because of the payoff you're getting out of it. It's hard to admit that you like hating people. First of all, they deserve it. And hating them is a secret way of sort of getting even with them. You hit them the little hate thoughts out there. And they wing their way through and stab the person. And you say, oh, I won't think of that. That's like a witch would think that. No. But that's what you're up to, aren't you? Little stabbing thoughts. Grief. People hang on to grief for lifetimes. About everything that's possible to die has died around me. How long are you going to hang on to the grief about that? I'll tell you how long to keep it. About 1 second. Let it go the instant it happens. Just let it go. Surrender it. completely and totally to God the instant it happens. Why? Because you develop the capacity to do that. So the reason for spiritual training then is you develop a powerful capacity to let go of anything. And you never know when it's going to come up. So-and-so just died. You should let go that instant. The minute the phone message comes in, you let it go. You don't grieve about it 30 years later. You don't celebrate every anniversary of the death of Cuckoo, your little bird. And then the next 2 weeks later, you got to celebrate the death of Uncle Louie. And then a month later, it's a time to celebrate the death of and then your mother's death comes up. The anniversary of all this shit. As you get older and older, the whole calendar is the anniversaries of crap. We're going to keep pumping 9/11 forever. We already got December 5th, right? Okay, then you got 1776, you got the end of World War I, and we got November 11th. Don't forget November 11th at 11 a.m. When I grew up, November 11th, 11 a.m. was Armistice Day. We all held our heart. There's a beautiful value to it. I'm just talking about the downside of it. It's one thing to give respect and send love to all those people, and to do so out of reverence. All right. We're talking about the fact that what makes these things tenacious is, first of all, you're trained in them. Your mind thinks this way, but after you're aware that you're trained in them and your mind thinks this way, and you see the absurdity of the idea of causality, you'll find that your mind still wants to do this, and you see, why is my mind still doing that when I know better? And a spiritual student usually goes into that. I know better. How come I'm still hating that guy and I want to get even with him? Why did I give him the finger? I told you the pleasure I got. The first and only time I ever did it in my life. It was terrific. I can see why those guys are out there throwing stones at the Jews, and the Jews are throwing it at the Arabs, and everybody's wanting to kill each other. I mean, it's terrific. Take that. I mean, that's a high like, beats riding bucking Broncos, you know what I mean? Got more drama. You see those guys out there at a rodeo, and there's a whole bunch of them sitting behind me, and they've all their own casts. All of them cast. They've all got all cripping up from riding these bulls, you know. Can't wait to get on the next one. The juice you get off of that, you know. I mean, the guy's he's had 6 fractures over the last 5 years riding bulls, and he's going to get right back on the next bull. Oh my gosh. Extreme sports, huh? All right, so willingness then, because that's one really important aspect of love. It's willingness that's going to really take you up here. Because willingness is going to give you the motivation to accept things. It's also going to take you past reason, which is the big roadblock. The big roadblock. Most of the people that go into spiritual work are usually in the 400s. I mean, many of them. They attend lectures like this are usually in the 400s, in which reason brings them here, and now reason becomes the block. Because very few people, to get to love, we said love, to transcend the 400s, is accomplished by about 4% of the population. 4%. Whoa. To get to unconditional love is 0.4%. 0.4%. Where's the numbers that go on all this stuff? Oh, here they are. 4%. And 540, 0.4%. Wow. So we talk about love a lot, but as a To realize one's identity as that which is the source of life itself is not all that easy to, I wouldn't say achieve, but that easy to realize. And therefore, I mentioned the things that I think can be useful that are generally available. Not everybody can go off and join an ashram. Not everybody can walk away from their family and their job, etc. So how can this go then? So the willingness to let go of positionalities, the willingness to surrender, not the things themselves, but the attachment to the things themselves. You don't have to give up your Cadillac, but you let go of its former meaning to you. You let go striving for success, because to realize the truth is the epitome of success. To realize the truth of who you are. So renunciation then means eventually an inner renunciation. The willingness to let go of insisting that if a thing isn't logical, it can't be true, and all these kind of positionalities. The willingness to then let go of everything that stands in the way of love. As we do that, we find that the things that keep coming up that block us from love then are feelings, and these feelings are based on certain perceptions, ways of seeing things, ways of interpreting them, conditionalities that we've been brainwashed into, and ask, am I willing to surrender that to God? Would I rather be right, or would I rather realize the presence of God? So willingness then always puts up the untruth against the truth and asks, are you willing to let this go? To be unwilling to let go of attachment to Kitty would mean grief, wouldn't it? You'd be setting yourself up for grief. I lose the cat. Night's going to be awful. Tomorrow I won't be able to lecture. I'm just going to be grieving and weeping and gnashing my teeth, right? So you see, the unwillingness then is what sets you up for this. You say to yourself, am I willing to set myself up for this or let it go? Now, that makes it a little more real, doesn't it? If you're willing to let it go for some airy-fairy sounding thing like the presence of God, which sounds good, but who knows what that is. But you might be willing to let it go, because if you don't, this is where you're going to end up. End up down the scale. Suffering from, you see, wantingness is an endless suffering, isn't it? Because wantingness, the constant wanting things, is constantly setting you up with desire. You're always wanting something. I only have one want left in the world. I keep it there. I cherish it. One worldly want. I said, God, can't I have just one? I don't really have it. I have a picture of it. And I carefully nurture this want, because I'm afraid if it disappears, you become invisible. Keeps you here to some degree. You need one want and one attachment or something. I'm not going to share. I was showing people a picture of it yesterday. Anyway. The willingness to renounce it. Am I willing to renounce it? Yes. In fact, it just went. Well, okay. All right, so what we're developing is the spiritual muscles, so that when you need them, they're there. As I step over the rattlesnake, there I am on the top of Schnebley Hill, and I was looking at a big place there, and as I step over it, good God Almighty, there is the hugest rattler you ever saw. Good Lord. And in that instant, there was letting go at absolute depth and absolute letting go-ness. All fear disappeared, all perception of it as a possible enemy and in its place, there was a profound stillness and peace that was infinitely powerful. The presence of love, the presence of God is so powerful it sweeps away everything. And so the snake is held there, suspended just like that. Can't move. That profound state of peace, the stillness of the presence of God holds all within itself. And nothing can withstand it. So when you need it, that capacity was already perfected to completely let go, totally, at great depth. And otherwise I wouldn't be here today. Because the snake would have just done a snake thing and I just do my human thing and, we both would have been in trouble, So a higher state prevailed. So you never know when you're going to need this capacity. You have to be, and one meditative style is to look at all the things in your life and keep surrendering what there is about it, aversion or attachment. So this is a willingness to surrender attachments and aversions. Do I really care if the rattlesnake kills me? To tell you the truth, no. No, why not now? I mean, later it's certain, so why not now? What's the difference? You can leave the body any day, so. Whereas today or tomorrow, it doesn't really make any difference, does it? That capacity then to surrender, to let go, is a form of love. See, we call love a calibrated level of consciousness, but actually all these things from here up are all forms of love. This is love in the form of the capacity to tell the truth about yourself. That's why being sensitive is a very indicative that you need help. If you get offended by things, feel uncomfortable about them, you better see your doctor. Because if you really accept who you are, nothing can make you feel uncomfortable. Nothing can be, injurious to your self-esteem, because if you're quite evolved, you don't have any self-esteem. How can people injure your self-esteem when you don't have any? I said, what do you need self-esteem for? Does a bird need self-esteem to fly? It doesn't need self-esteem. I mean, this is an appurtenance that you plaster onto yourself. There's always somebody in the news, 6:30, whose sensitivities have been offended. And you can't live in this world without offending somebody's sensitivity nowadays. If you get up and give the lady her seat, she feels offended because you're insulting her that feminine is weaker than male or something. If you hold the door, if you don't hold the door. So, I mean, you're offending somebody no matter what you do, you see the thing? So every night somebody's offended by something. What was it this week? This week there was a group in Berkeley that might be offended if they showed the red, white, and blue on the campus. To celebrate 9/11, there was a group that politically felt people might be offended by showing the red, white, and blue on the campus. So you can be offended by the flag, you can be offended by anything. And lots of people are offended by God or any mention thereof. That's right, they have a political group, don't they? I forgot all about that. Remove God from everything. E pluribus something or other. In blank we trust. The United States Treasury. The Constitution will have to rewrite that. The equality of man is guaranteed by the divinity, blank. We'll have to delete divinity of his origination. It's all right, so try to pretend when you totally accept the reality of who you are, you can't be offended. You're fatso, they can call you any name they want to, shorty, four eyes, dumbbell, right. Somebody calls you a liar, you tell them I'm the best liar on the planet. You want to harm me? I'm worth a fortune. Yeah, you're bad looking, I say. Every time I look in the morning, I call 911. I think I looked at myself in the mirror and I called 911. I mean, I'm so ugly. You say to yourself, the reason I have all these problems in life is because I'm so stupid and I'm so ugly. That's true. It's because I'm stupid. Well, all right, you see, once you accept the possible downside of everything, nobody can offend you. You're greedy. Yeah, I am greedy. I'm Mr. Greed, man. Give me what I want. You know what I mean? You just become that which people say you are. You're impervious. There's nothing you can say. So, you see, we can't make neuroticism the law of the land. You're not going to be able to not offend somebody, see? Because some people are going to be offended if you do, and some people are going to be offended if you don't. Consequently, you're always going to offend somebody, so live with it. You're offended when you go through the line in the airport, so be offended. I mean, if it's your problem, if you're offended. That's the law of the land right now. So, context then. So truth then, what we call truth, which is usually just content, depends on context. What's truth today is not truth tomorrow. What's appropriate today is not appropriate tomorrow. What's appropriate in this circumstance is not appropriate in that circumstance. You see what I'm saying? The difficulty then with one irrationality is it doesn't understand that meaning comes out of context, not just content. So the political position that is causing most of the aggravations in society right now is the inability to discern that context totally changes content. What's suitable in peace is not the same as suitable in war. What's suitable in the inner city streets is not suitable in Park Avenue inside. So what is appropriate shifts depending on context, who, when, the totality of the universe. So context is really the totality of the whole history of the entire universe. And if people are going to insist on looking for a cause, you tell them the cause of it is the totality of the entire universe throughout all of time. And that's why this little piece of dust is sitting right where it is, you know. And trying to pin it on me, man, forget it. You know? It's the universe's fault. I'll be some lawyer, wouldn't I? I'd love to be a lawyer. I'd love to be a lawyer, man. I just whoop them. Because I can see the lack of logic, and it's always one of confusing content, taking content out of context and confusing the two, you know, see what I'm saying? And assuming causes when there is no such cause in the universe. Anyway, all right, the willingness to let go all blocks then. So this is a form of love. This is the courage to accept the truth of who you are. Yeah, I have a certain problem and I'm going to go to a 12-step meeting about it. I told a lady that in the office this week. I thought she was going to buck me on it. And she said, oh, I'm going to start going back to meetings. I thought, whoa, thank you, Lord. I don't have to argue with her. So a lot of people hit bottom here. This is where you hit bottom. All this stuff here has taken you to the point that it's not working anymore. And suddenly you become quite open. And neutral would mean, yeah, I don't care if I go to the meetings or I do go to the meetings. If you say I should go to the meetings, then I'm willing, because I accept that I got a problem. And I understand that. And eventually out of lovingness, so the reason to continue it really is out of lovingness for yourself and others. All right, so this is the great block, though. This is the great block that we said 22% of the population crosses this line here. 87% is down here. 87% can't use kinesiology to tell the truth about anything. It doesn't work for them. Well, all right, the willingness to surrender all the blocks to love, then, are really what spiritual work is about. You don't have to seek love. You don't have to learn about love. There's nothing required about love. Because when the blocks that prevent it are removed, it comes in like a tsunami. It just wipes you out. And anybody who's been in that bliss state knows It's ultra powerful. It just takes over and wipes out anything that is not love. We're going to do a lecture on karma too, because once, these are all ways of undoing the blocks to enlightenment. The karmic propensity then, you begin to suspect, is why you can't let go of this particular thing. After much prayer, after much psychotherapy, after much everything you can do, it is still stuck there. And therefore, I think the next lecture is on karma, in which we're going to use kinesiology to pick up what the block is. Now that you can see what it is, it's easy to let it go. But when you don't know what it is that's holding it there, you're sort of up against the block. So love then is a style, a way of being, and it's a way of being with yourself. Out of compassion for yourself, you're willing to let go of the things that bring you pain. So instead of going from the bottom up, we can start from the top down. Out of compassion for yourself, then you're willing to let go of that which brings you pain, suffering, guilt, brings it to yourself and others. Out of love for yourself, out of love for oneself, out of compassion for oneself, out of compassion for myself, I'm not going to allow myself to fall into the pit of being so linked to something that if it leaves, I will then go into grief. Out of compassion. So that lovingness now takes the form of an attitude towards yourself and your own life and those around you. I don't want to put her in the position of tending to a grieving cat pop, cat daddy. All right, so out of compassion for everything then, our willingness to let things go. We do it all the time as a style of life. One expression of love then is devotion, and in spiritual work that devotion becomes more and more intense. It finally reaches the point where it's willing to let anything go that stands in the way. So we may think it's the small things that we're letting go of. We say, well, I let go of my favorite sneakers, and it seems trivial. Oh no, the capacity to let go of your favorite sneakers and not grieve about them or be angry at somebody stealing them or something. The capacity to surrender your sneakers is going to be one of the last things right before enlightenment. Why is that? It's because you have that capacity to let go. You try and get some people to let go of something, it's really something. You just cannot pry them loose, You're going to go to jail if you don't do it. Everybody's going to leave you. You're going to die of it, and they won't let go. It's like they're in a spasm, All right, the capacity to learn to let things go, you've learned with small things. Could you let go of being mad at that guy for cutting in front of you in traffic? That's a wonderful example. Every day you get all these spiritual opportunities. Say, go ahead, man, it's all right. Go ahead. SOB. Oh, then after a while, you let go of the SOB and you say, oh well, we'll get there at the same time anyway, rationality. I'm only going to get there 3 seconds later, big deal, So then you're trying it with logic, see? You're trying to think. So you let go of all this stuff about him. I decided not to kill him. And he's not really causing me any problem with pride that he's a better driver than I am. You're all the way up to reason. Reason says, a couple of seconds this way, a couple of seconds that way. It's all the same, you know what I mean? But we're getting there. So we're developing the tools and the techniques. The most powerful thing you'll need is really powerful capacities in the one-pointedness of mind to go the whole way in non-duality and Zen and advanced Buddhism. This is a capacity that you learn, and then when you really need it, because you're going to run into tests that are really quite powerful, stronger than what you think, both overt and not so overt. Because as you move ahead, that which is made uncomfortable or displaced in its control over and influence over mankind begins to get annoyed that you're moving out of that domain and threatening their domain. And so you start getting the challenges. And when the challenges come up, that's when you need the tools. So spiritual work then, out of love and compassion for yourself, and out of love for God, devotion to God, you develop these strengths, these capacities, this discernment. And eventually it's like a knife. You can cut through anything. You can lose anything and everything. Disconnect. Parents, grandparents, country, lovers, wives, children, dogs, cats, houses, titles, anything. In an instant, it's gone. So that laser-like one-pointedness of mind and the willingness to cut through anything, no matter what it is what's going to be needed at a later date. So we perfect it every day. We perfect that capacity. So that's a form of love. All of spiritual work is a form of love. We surrender it all as a form of devotion. Out of my love for thee, O Lord, I let go my attachment to so-and-so, or I surrender it to thee. The willingness to let go of anything and everything to God. In the end, you're asked to let go all of it, even physicality. Even physicality. And of course, the ultimate one, which we'll talk about at the end of the lectures, is the willingness to give up what you think is the source of life itself. And you're asked to give up life for God, and you see that the ego is coming to its end, but you don't know it's just the ego, you think it's you. And the willingness to surrender life itself, as you understand it, to God is going to require all the strengths that you've learned. So devotion then is a one-pointed willingness, and it becomes tested all the time. The expression of God of love as devotion then becomes the core of Christianity and many other forms of devotion, whether as Zen meditation. So in strict meditation then, it's really one's devotion that carries you through the practice of meditation. It can keep you sitting there for 8 hours non-stop, no problem. It can keep you sitting there 12 hours non-stop. It can keep you sitting there until you don't know what happened, but you apparently fell over from dehydration or something. Could be a couple days later, you have no memory of it. That capacity then becomes perfected, and it is a way of devotion to your own spiritual evolution. One becomes devoted to the evolution, and you see that this is a commitment to God and to all the higher beings that are calling you to do so. People say, how do I know I'm going to be enlightened someday or something? Well, I tell them, if you weren't destined to be enlightened, you wouldn't be in this lecture. Nobody except somebody who's destined to be enlightened would even be here. Who would be at a class on how to drive a speedboat? Only people who are going to get a speedboat. Nobody else is going to be there. By definition, the people who are interested in enlightenment are the people who are going to become enlightened. I mean, that's how you get there, isn't it? Unless you're one of those drop off the cliff enlightenments, that happened too. And it's just as you go over the side, you completely and totally surrender everything to God. You go into an incredible state. Much to your dismay, you wake up 4 days later in a hospital. Everybody's saying, oh, it's so wonderful you're still alive. You're going, man, I was in heaven. And And they resuscitated me. Thanks a lot. Yeah, it took me right out of that bliss. I'm really happy about that. Yes, well, it makes the family happy. They're happy now. He's breathing again. Okay. Good for Aunt Nellie. Oh, look, he's breathing again, Mother. Oh, golly. Any of you who have had near-death experiences know the humor of that one. So it's possible to stay in a very good state all the time, and one of the expressions of love is humor. Why? Because humor recontextualizes all of life in such a way that you can handle it without resorting to any of the lower levels. There's nothing to be angry about if you see that it's sort of absurd, you know what I mean? Oh, God, I don't even see it. Anyway. It's a way of staying in the world. To recontextualize things, what is it? It's comparing the context of reality with the content of appearance, and you see the absurdity of the comparison, I guess. So that humor is one style, and people who become spiritually evolved often become quite comical because they wear the world lightly, like a garment, and everything sort of becomes comical. And, because of the contrast with reality, the absurdity. So it's the absurdity, it's the theater of the absurd that is comical. And, yeah, people don't expect that. They expect piety. Well, piety is profound, and the difficulty I had this morning was I didn't know if I was going to function, because in a state of bliss, you see, as you let go all these things, progressively life becomes more beautiful and more harmonious. The miraculous takes care of everything. A sense of inner joy begins to arise, becomes so severe that it can be ecstatic. In a state of ecstasy, you really cannot function in the world. In a state of high joy, you can't really function in the world. And in a state of bliss, you just sit there. I thought maybe I'll just bless everybody today, but I managed to get out of it with the help of people, because this morning I thought, oh wow, yeah, the state, so having been with it for some years, one learns how to sort of be with it more or less, but then at times it becomes quite profound, it cannot be denied, and it just wipes you out. That's why it's good to have friends that know what you're about, friends that understand it. To be associated with spiritual groups. When I was a psychiatrist for some years, many years, for the Episcopal Diocese, the Catholic Diocese, the Catholic nuns, the Zen monastery, the ministry, for many years, and I had to discern the difference between these states. Is this guy in a state of samadhi, or is he catatonic? He came down from the Zen monastery. Borderline schizophrenia is not a good condition in which to start a Zen meditation, because pretty soon things start talking to you and flying around. Is this a state of ecstasy, true spiritual ecstasy, or is it religious mania? Hard to differentiate. Because religious ecstasy, I'm sure I can think of moments in my life when if a psychiatrist had examined me, he would have probably ordered Thorazine. So that was really my function. Does he need Thorazine, or should we all bow to him, you know what I'm saying? Because those high states can be very, very powerful. Ecstasy and joy. And the one that takes us out of the world, and the one that took us out this morning, was bliss. Sat Chidananda the presence becomes so profound that one really becomes immobilized by it. So let's hear that. Karen. Karen. Let's hear something that calibrates around 740. 740. You got it over there? Yeah? See, the purposes of a church, the beauty, the sanctity, the music, and the mantras, the pageantry, the stained glass windows, the incense. Well, you try and figure out how to work your computer in that state, huh? What computer? That's 740. And it makes you weep and immobilizes you in a state of exquisite beauty, the exquisite beauty of the presence of God. And so you can see why you need friends, because if you go into that state profoundly, you really can't function. And so we'll take a break now that we can't function. If you allow that state to continue, you have to stop lecturing. You can see it immobilizes you. Put it down again. Okay, we just wanted people to know we were back. Some of these questions are very funny, very funny. We'll start with the first one. The answer to this is no. This is a question by a good-hearted soul. Isn't everyone who is not in this room also destined for enlightenment? No. Yeah. Miss these lectures and you've had it, you know what I'm saying? No, it's an interesting question because it brings up other dimensions ruled by entities who hate God, refuse God, and consciously refuse God. The lower astral regions are those who hate God, refuse God. When given the opportunity to choose God, have said no. And they perpetuate for eons. And that's what rules the lower astral domains, is those who refuse God and deny God. And therefore they are not destined for enlightenment. Yeah. So, one of the forms of love that we didn't get a chance to talk about this morning is the classic yoga of karma yoga. You know, the great yogas through the heart, through non-duality, through mind. The third great one, which characterizes Christianity and characterizes, in fact, all spiritually motivated people, is karma yoga, the yoga of service. And Krishna speaks of that. It brings up something extremely important, that what spiritual work is really about is a recontextualization of your whole life and everything in it. So devotion, the pathway of love, is sanctifying all of your life in all of its details and all of its expressions as an expression of love to God and to all that exists. So, as you take that little ring off the top of your stove that goes around the burner there, and you take the steel wool and you really polish it so it shines, you do so because everything that exists because innately it's divine. Once you see the divinity of all things, watering the garden, shining your shoes, all are equal. All are done as... So, as a devoted being, all your actions become those of devotion, of service to others, service to God. Service to others is service to God. Without the dozen or so people it took to set up this conference, who all did it out of devotion until all hours of the night. Aren't you ever going to go to bed? It couldn't happen. So their devotion and behind their work, the endless phone calls, the endless faxes, the endless letters, answering all that's required to just put it together is rather a staggering amount of work. So their devotion. So the commitment then to God is a devotional statement that I am what I am and all that I do is for thy sake, O Lord. Not that God needs it. People think worship and all that sacrifice is giving something to God. Guilt, penance, wearing ashcloth and ashes and crawling on your knees till they bleed across the cobblestones, which we've all done in some lifetime, doesn't turn God on. Man, I get off on suffering, you know what I mean? What is he, weird? No, it's because in our own belief system then, our understanding of God or misunderstanding of God is that we do this out of devotion to God. So, you become a true spiritual seeker, you really are sanctifying your whole life and everything in it to God and to the service of truth, and that which makes the presence of God more apparent to others. When you sanctify all that you do, then you take it from the mundane into a different realm, because you're putting it in a different context. And power comes out of context. It's the context that gives all that exists its power. It's out of context that you survive from moment to moment. Once you see, in a near-death experience, you become aware of that what you are is always existence, and its survival was never threatened in the first place, and all the worries you ever had were ridiculous. If karmically, when you leave this world is already set, which it is, then obviously you had to get there. In order to die at a prescribed point in time, you must have survived long enough to get there. So you can quit worrying about survival, because between now and the time you die, your survival is guaranteed. That's a true statement, Resist. It's a true statement. Between now and the time you die, your survival is guaranteed, so stop worrying about it. Whether you go from this or go from that, it's irrelevant, isn't it? I mean, when you go over a cliff or whatever, it doesn't really make any difference. We've said that before, that the time of your death is already karmically destined from the moment of your birth. Let's ratify that. That is still true, Resist. Still true. To know that when you leave here is already preset, you can quit worrying about it, People, why don't you do this, you'll live longer, do that, you'll live longer. I mean, it's absurd. How are you going to get out of this world, folks? I mean, they close all the door, you can't die of this, you can't die of that. I mean, what's going to happen? You're going to become immortal? Can you imagine what you're going to look like when you're 150? I mean, like all these guys killing themselves for God. And then they're going to get 70 virgins when they get there. I always joke, yeah, but they're 900 years old. Heaven is not really a bordello, All right, so humor about it is better than being angry, being vicious, because humor is a form of compassion. You understand that people who are innocent are easily misled. They're easily taken over by that which is ungodly. And the most common way to take over that which is God, the most common way is to claim the name of God and then be up to something horrible, but do it in the name of God. So anyway, that which usurps the name of God has its own karma to account for. And that was why the first question we got was no. People who do that are not destined for enlightenment. To rape the innocent, spiritually innocent, with that which is fallacious and leads in the opposite direction, must have a karma too horrible to think about. I don't want to even think about it. Then we get very specific questions. Spirituality then, to be a seeker, to be a devotee, whatever you want to call it, to be a monk, to be a layman, to walk about in a contemplative state no matter what you do. It's because you've contextualized your life in a different manner. Once you've sanctified your own life, and I surrender my life to Thee, O Lord, you can talk about love, but when it takes over, you can't talk anymore. The surrender to God at great depth is overwhelming, and that was what brought on the state that occurred in 1965. And swept away everything for many years. Yeah. So, we'll go back to some specific questions. Let's see. You lose your sense of humor, you're gone. Oh, now I'm better. Okay. That's right. Not everybody's going to get enlightened. Not you, boy. Okay, now we're back in the Rancha book. Well, we get asked a lot of details, specific gurus, specific books. We're working now. We just finished Sonia, God bless her, is finishing we hope the final manuscript, and I don't know what I was talking about. Oh yes, and then after we finish that, we're already halfway through another book in which we do about 1,000 calibrations, because first of all, not everybody's got the time to do them. You know, you got to go to work, you got family and kids, you can't just stand around calibrating stuff all day. And then people don't have faith in their own capacity, they want confirmation. So we're doing about 1,000 calibrations of things that we think would be of interest. It's like you're going from black and white into Technicolor. When you add calibrations to everything that ever occurred, from the great pyramids to all the great cathedrals, to the great composers, to all the great philosophers, scientists, works of art, music, not only throughout history but contemporary, you get a totally different understanding of life and its expressions. Totally different understanding, much greater depth. You finally go, oh, I see, oh, I see, oh, I see. So we feel that it's a great, just going over the numbers, just to read through the numbers, you go through an aha experience. The first time I was at the time a teacher of the Course in Miracles, and I had a secretary back east, and we were comparing, she was making a list of ego positions and their spiritual corollary. And as she was typing it up, she went into a bliss state. She wasn't even interested in the subject. She said, I just didn't. Oh, God bless her heart. And she was my secretary back east for some 20 years. So anyway, she just blissed out just from the material. So I feel it would be greatly valuable, and we're trying to figure out how to write it without hurting anybody's feelings, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. We could just stick to dead people, but they got descendants. You know, my great-great-great-grandfather was... So anyway, how to express that. So there are so many books, and we've advised you go through your spiritual library, see what makes you go strong, see what makes you go weak, and those that make you go weak, throw them away and leave them in a pile, but don't throw them out right away. Leave them there for a week, because you walk by them every day, you finally get it. Wow, I see what the difference is, you know? All the end times books and all, you know, all that kind of stuff is all over here, see? Those things which are eternal truths. You can tell that that which is true has been agreed upon by every enlightened being throughout all of time. There's absolutely no disagreement about anything between all enlightened beings. It's always been exactly the same. Anything that varies from that is not the truth. And we make that rather specific in the book we just finished, but I thought the next book, where we calibrate about 1,000 things, tells you where it all is. Now, everything doesn't have to be 1,000 to be useful, you know what I'm saying? If you're down here, something that calibrates at 180 is going to be very good, you know what I'm saying? If you're in apathy, if you can get up to wanting something, you've made a big move out of the wastebasket, crawling across on your bare knees, beating yourself, falling over, crying all the time, quivering, laying there paralyzed with fear. if you can get pissed about something, you're going to at least move your body in some kind of a positive direction because you don't want to win and get out of this freaking state you're in. Don't forget, whole continents live here. Whole continents are born in this level down here. Whole continents, the whole continent of Africa. The whole continent calibrates like 70 or something. You're born with AIDS, to poverty-stricken, drug-addicted parents who desert you and don't feed you, and you die of starvation at age 6 months. Whole continents live that way. Whole continents, whole countries. You know, we live in a civilized society that calibrates around 430, and we think that's what's normal. That's what's normal for us, but it is definitely not what's normal for other people. All right, so we thought I wanted to, for these lectures, I wanted to make a map of the world. You know, I had Europe and I had South America. And I took out some atlas, and it didn't copy very good off the copy machine. But I thought the different countries of the world and continents, and what is the calibrated level of the energies of those various societies, those various countries. It gives you quite an understanding of politics. Without those calibrations, you don't really understand politics, because you're coming at it from your position, you know. Your position is not what prevails elsewhere in this world at all. Not at all. Not at all. I've been in places in the country where a whole family of 20 lives in a couple of cardboard boxes put together with string, and they take turns sleeping in it and digging up roots. They do not live in your world at all. So I thought, you know, the different countries and continents and about where they're at, it gives you an understanding of why you see, to be a political diplomat, you really have to understand these things. The terrible mistakes we make militarily and diplomatically and politically is a total failure to comprehend where these other people are at. You know, they're not anywhere at what you're talking about. That's the trouble with academic views of things and politically correct things, because you live in an airy-fairy world. You know, people don't live there. Yeah, people also have bodies. They forget that. Anyway, the Urantia book, let's see, do we have permission to do that? I'm familiar with the Urantia book many years ago. Urantia, we have permission. It's over 200, we said. Thank God. It's over 300, 350. All right, it's in the high 300s. So, you see, each of these teaching methods is appropriate for certain levels. We said there's no really higher, lower levels because you're learning tools, and these tools are useful when you're at 800 just like they're useful when you're at 200. So if your own calibrations are in here, let's say let's say your life is horrible and you decide to quit drinking, you go to AA, you take the first step. That takes you over 200 right there. You say 200 won't take you all the way to enlightenment. Oh yeah, it will, because without courage, you're not going to take any of these other steps. Each one of these is a brick. So none of them is really higher than the other. This is the way the calibrated scale came out, and it just came out, you know, by questioning, and this is the way it came out. These things are very, very necessary. Without the capacity to face the truth about yourself, you're not going to move up any higher. All right, so here we have something that calibrates in the 300s, and so to move out of here, all this stuff up here is meaningless. I read this very erudite book last night. I just skimmed through it in a hurry to see what I could get out of about quantum mechanics and its application to consciousness, and there wasn't anything of any use in there. It was, it calibrated around 450. Well, I know all that. That's just, you know, intellectualism and logic and computers. I mean, in mathematics, the mathematics of consciousness is one thing. The consciousness is something totally different, to which you cannot apply mathematics, actually. But I'm looking for that interface between the linear and the nonlinear, which was the point of writing power versus force. And again, in the conclusion of I have a little appendix at the end on quantum mechanics, because the quantum potentiality is that space where, from the viewpoint of common logic, you can see that which is not to which logic is not applicable, can also exist, because that which is hardcore scientism denies that anything other than the linear reality could exist, and I want to show that au contraire. Au contraire. The very reason you say that is because of that which is nonlinear, which is dominating your consciousness, and which you're not going to find out with mathematics. You only find it out through meditation. Let's see. I don't know if I can answer that one or not. I don't think so. The method of kinesiology, as I said, we're not kinesiologists. It's only a technique that we use for the sake of spiritual research and for comprehending the nature of life and illuminating things for which there is no other tool possible. And we do somewhat review it each lecture. The two people have to be over 200. The purpose of the question has to be integrous. You make it in the form of a statement. And before you do it, you ask if you have permission to do it. You say, I have permission to do this, and then the person resists. And not infrequently, you get a no. You know, we got a no this morning. We'll get a no. If you're curious and you've got time, you can research the reason for the no. A lot of times we're in a hurry, we just want a yes or no for, let's say, should we turn left or right, you know? I don't need to know the reason. Because this one leads to the pits, I don't need to know that. I just say I should make a left turn, yes, I make a left turn. So, but if you have time, you can research the reason for the no. Sometimes couples are not good with each other. I don't know why, marital couples, we just hadn't had time to research why that is. Sometimes a couple have to find a third party, and with them they're fine. There's methods of doing it by yourself. Let's see. Doing it by yourself is an okay, we have permission to ask this, is an okay way of doing it, resist. And it is reasonably reliable. If it's an important question, I would double check it with kinesiology, resist. Okay, so everybody knows this method here, the so-called thumb and middle finger, in which you hold it as tight as you can. Now you picture Jesus Christ. You try to break, you see with this if you can break it. Now I'm going to hold in mind somebody who's been on TV a lot lately. Bin Laden. I don't know, Bin Laden makes you go weak, I don't know why. Anyway, so that's a technique you can use by yourself. And then we found that 10% of the general population can't do it. Is that right? Let's see. 10% of people who are entitled to do it are unable to do it, resist. Huh. And that's due to some strangeness about their chi energy, resist. And that chi energy has to do with karma. It has to do something with karma. So karmically, we don't have time to research it today, but karmically, some people have some problem with their chi energy. That about 10% of those who are entitled to do kinesiology are unable to do it. So within those limitations. The other thing about spirituality is that you want to know specific things about things that are very applicable in a very wide variety of expressions. And sometimes people use it to ask questions that are really sort of irrelevant, you know what I mean? Yeah. We were going to use it to find Kitty yesterday, but Kitty showed up. I asked the Holy Spirit to find Kitty, and sure enough, Lou popped up and there was Kitty. He found Kitty. And Susan realized where it was. She says, oh, I know where it is, behind so-and-so's house. And Lou went over there, and sure enough, there it was. And then also we got a present of a bunch of books on kitties. So somehow kittiness, just sort of, that energy field coalesced, discovered Kitty, and at the same time somebody said, here's a present for you, and I opened it, and it was 4 little books on kitties. It's just sort of funny. So that's the one you can use from yourself. Now, the question about President Bush comes up. I do a lot of radio programs, and we're going to do one in November in Scottsdale. Let's see, we got one in October we're going to do at the Church of Agape, which is in L.A. In November, we're going to do one in Scottsdale with Mishka Productions, which is associated with Hay House. And I do a number of radio programs, and a lot of them are fun. A lot of these interviewers are fun people, and they have a comical way of expressing things. So a week or two ago, we did a radio and a TV one right after that. And anyway, we had a good time with it. But this question about President Bush comes up all the time. And you can tell the political slant of the radio interviewer or whoever it is, it's sort of like, tell us why President Bush is wrong, So you shouldn't ask a question with kinesiology unless you're prepared for the answer. Prepared for the answer. Sometimes I get letters from people, what do you think about Guru Baba so-and-so? Well, I know from just looking at him and picking up his energy, he's about 140. So am I going to answer this and upset this person who's going to lie awake and you think he's giving everything away for Baba so-and-so and the guy calibrates at 140? Or what should I do? So as far as President Bush, let's say we said that the office of the presidency runs around 450. Roosevelt was like 499. To run a government, you should really be in about the mid 400s. If you get too high, Einstein's 499, and Einstein wouldn't be too good at running a government, So you need to be around 450. That's where Bush is, around 450, 460. That is capable, that's logic, that's reason, it's sane, it is geared to this world. It's not off in la-la land, nor is it into the spleen, or even personal ambition, which would be the solar plexus. No, it's integrous. Don't forget that which is over 200 is integrous. So here's where we would want the presidents to be, around here. If he gets too much up here, he's not going to be useful anymore. He's going to be like the Pope. Mother Teresa. You can't have Mother Teresa running about government, you know what I'm saying? You got to be with this world and its political realities. So to be appropriate, you have to be appropriate to where you are. We're appropriate to where you are. So that's why one number is not better than another number. I remember going into a boxing ring one time in 1945 or whenever it was. I went aboard this ship in the Minesweeper, hazardous duty in the South Pacific, and a young guy who's still a friend of mine, Jimmy Sanders. Anyway, there was only 18 of us on this crew, Minesweeper. Anyway, I come ashore and these guys had got tattoos, earrings and stuff. And I mean, they're grizzly-looking guys, have been out at sea for a while. So this guy says, hey, Shorty. That was my name, henceforth, Shorty. Or Four Eyes. Anyway, I took my glasses off. Shorty says, you know how to box? I says, well, I had lessons with Richie Mitchell, who was the former middleweight champion of the world in Milwaukee. As a kid, I was always getting beat up, so my grandfather took me to Richie Mitchell's gym and said, teach him how to fight, I was never interested in fighting and all these gruesome wrestling and crap that kids did. I mean, I thought kids were disgusting when I was a kid. And I was picking their nose and they wanted to stick their gooey fingers in your eye and wrestle you, and they were sweaty. Oh my God. Anyway, these horrible kids. So he says, you got to teach them how to box. So I went to Richie Mitchell, and I was a mosquito weight. Flyweight was the smallest I had. Anyway, I was mosquito weight. So I learned how to box, and after I learned how to box, I was in choir. When we had choir practice 2 nights a week, I was in the choir. I was an acolyte, and when the bishop walked around, I went by his side and held his robes and did the incense and all, and I sang Panis Angelicus as this boy soprano. in a great cathedral with incense and stained glass, and I'll tell you, if that don't bring tears to your eyes, whew, just knocked me out. I don't know, I kept singing. Anyway, I'm just reminiscing. I forgot what I was telling you for. Huh? Boxing, yes. Well, I learned how to box, so I was a mosquito weight. And the way I won after that, the first thing I won, the first fight after that, I won. And I was so fast that he didn't know what hit him, and I always hit him in the nose, bang, like that, and then I was out before he could hit me. And he'd get a bloody nose, end the fight. So that was pretty good. I don't know why I told you the story, but. Huh? Yeah, so he said, oh yeah. So anyway, I learned how to box. So I go in the Navy and Jimmy Sanders says to you, hey Shorty, that was my name thereafter. He said, you can't be too sensitive about things. And he says, you know how to box? I said, yeah. He says, I said, yeah, I took lessons with Richie Mitchell. Wow, he says, we'll go up in the gun tub and go around, So we go up like this, one shot and I was unconscious. Hit me once. Later I found out he was a champion of the 3rd Fleet. He was the most fearsome boxer I've ever seen. He was ferocious and fast. God bless him. Anyway, we're still friends. So after not hearing from these people for 50 years, my mates on the ship, after 50 years after the war is over, all of a sudden I started hearing from them. Imagine that, 50 years, and some guy calls me and says, are you Dave Hawkins? Yeah. Are you Shorty? I said, yeah. I'm so short. Yeah, he said. He told me who I was, and we both broke into tears. So everybody then we found each other, and as each one would call, we would always break into tears. I would break into tears, the guy at the other end would break into tears. You see, because that love there was beyond all time. It's the one characteristic of love, you see, is that which your mates back in World War II, there was a love there that was incredible, and it lasted forever. 50 years you didn't hear from them, and it was like yesterday, you break into tears. So that commitment to love then is beyond time, beyond assailing. I don't care what he's done in the meantime, it's all irrelevant. It's only the reality of the reconnection with love as a state of mind. What occasioned the jump over to the 200s? Well, we said the most incredible thing that ever happened, I think, other than the great gurus, the great avatars, was in the late 80s when consciousness level went from 190 to 207. As I've said before, it was at the time of the harmonic convergence. It was at the time of, World Peace Day or something. Everybody woke up at 4 o'clock and we all prayed for peace. All those things occurred at the same time. And about the same time, monolithic communism fell over and many other events. But the destiny of mankind then has become quite different. The destiny of man at 207 is considerably different than 190. 190 means endless hell, and 207 means only localized hell. It means sort of that mankind is going to progress. I'm just telling you things that are in the book I'm finishing now, but we'll ask about it. In the book we announced the evolution of mankind is progressing, and partly his nervous system is changing, in order to be able to handle higher energies, The mankind up to now could only handle an energy up to 1,000, Now, on very rarely, but occasion, it can go over 1,000. That's the first time in history, All right. And it presages the evolution, the appearance of a new, of Homo spiritus. Okay, the evolution of Homo spiritus. We see Homo sapien came off there. But to handle higher energies, you really need a different nervous system. This nervous system is horrendous. If you're going to go over 600, it's not made to go over 600. You really need a different nervous system. So in a way, it presaged to me the prophesied return of Christ to earth. To me, the return of Christ to earth is not a physicality. It's the return of the, it means that consciousness will dominate mankind, because up till the late 80s, mankind was dominated by energies that were satanic and luciferic primarily. Mankind was only interested in slaughtering each other. The great hordes that came down on Europe and the Roman Empire, the only thing they were interested in was slaughtering everybody. They slaughtered them all, killed them. And then they made the great discovery that live people were worth more than dead people, and slavery was born. And you see, if we recontextualize slavery, it was a great advance. Instead of getting slaughtered by the tens of thousands, we now corralled 5,000 and we sold you off. And of course, the buyer was buying you like cattle, and cattle are worth money, so they saw to it you were fed, basics were taken care of. The alternate was just to be killed on the battlefield and die of your wounds. So rather than dying slowly of your wounds on the battlefield, you got to work for somebody else. And I think in a certain way you earned a certain karma by doing so. Certain karma by doing so. The willingness to surrender one's life to service. That service may take all different kinds of forms depending on what your level of consciousness is. So service means something different here. Service out of love to God will mean something quite different here than it will from here, from here, from here, from here, from here. Here, service to God might mean to you the willingness to kill Americans for God. That's how it's being held in mind, truly, by those people. I think the naive are brainwashed that way. I think those who brainwash them are not deluded and don't really believe that at all, but they know it works. Let's see if that's so. We have permission to ask this question in front of this audience. Those who blow themselves up to kill Americans for Allah are intrinsically naive, resist. Intrinsically have been spiritually raped, resist. Intrinsically have been brainwashed, resist. The source of their brainwasher is not innocent, resist. He is aware of what it's doing and comes from the lower astral, resist. Okay, so those are the people who are destined not to be enlightened. They rape the innocent of the spiritually pure and tell them to do that which is the opposite, okay?